Imagine walking into a crowded American fair in 1904. Music playing, children laughing, thousands of people eating snacks and taking photographs. Then you turn a corner and see human beings locked behind fences. Entire families being watched like animals. Strangers pointing at them, studying them, mocking them. And the most disturbing part, millions of visitors thought this was completely normal. This is the forgotten horror of the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. When most people hear World's Fair, they imagine inventions. Ferris wheels, electric lights, a celebration of human progress. But hidden beneath the surface of the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair was something far darker.
One of the greatest public displays of racism and human exploitation in American history. Men, women, and children from all over the world were transported to the United States and displayed as living exhibits. Some were forced to perform daily before a crowd. Others were treated like scientific specimens. And some may never fully understand why they were brought there. Even more horrifying, photos of the event still exist. Smiling crowds stood beside human beings treated like attractions, as if it were entertainment, and this history almost forgotten. The 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis was massive. Officially called the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, it was designed to show America's power and progress. And for many Americans at the time, it felt like the future had arrived. New technology, huge buildings, exotic attractions from around the world. More than 19 million people attended. But underneath all the excitement was an ugly obsession. The idea that some races and cultures were more civilized than others. And the fair organizers wanted to prove it publicly. So they built what became known as the anthropology exhibit. Though many historians now call them something else. human souls. Organizers brought over more than 1,000 indigenous people from different parts of the world, including groups from the Philippines, Africa, and Native American tribes. They were placed inside recreated villages. Visitors walked through and watched them live their daily lives like they were observing animals in a cage. Some people were instructed to perform rituals repeatedly. For audiences, others were photographed endlessly. And newspapers at the time described them using language that feels horrifying today. But one group became the center of attention more than anyone else. The Igorot people from the Philippines. Their organizers obsessed over portraying them as primitive. Crowds gathered to watch them eat meals, dance, and interact. Almost like a theater performance, except these were real human beings. And many Americans watching didn't even question it. What makes the story even darker is that this wasn't only entertainment, it was also treated like science. Anthropologists and researchers used the fair to push racist theories about human evolution and intelligence. They measured skulls, took photographs, compared body features, trying to rank entire races of people. Today, it sounds monstrous. But back then, many educated people openly supported these ideas, which is terrifying in its own way, because evil doesn't always arrive screaming. Sometimes it arrives wearing a suit and calling itself science. And some researchers treated the people at the fair less like humans and more like laboratory subjects. One of the creepiest details about the fair was the presence of children. Kids born into these indigenous groups were also displayed publicly. American visitors watched them play, eat, and sleep. Imagine being a child surrounded by strangers staring at you every single day, pointing cameras at you, judging you, laughing at you. Some reports suggest visitors would throw objects or yell insults. Others treated the exhibits like safari attraction. And because photography was exploding in popularity at the time, many people proudly took pictures beside the human exhibits, as if posing next to something non-human. Those photographs still exist today, frozen smiles beside unimaginable cruelty. And then there's one story that still haunts historians. A man named Ota Benga, originally from the Congo. Though he became more infamous later at the Bronx Zoo.
His story reflects the same horrifying mentality behind these exhibitions, captured during colonial violence, transported across the world, displayed before crowds. Treated as something exotic rather than human. The fact that this happened in public is difficult to comprehend.
No secret prison, no hidden experiment. This happened in front of ordinary families, and many spectators brought their children to watch. That's what makes stories like this so unsettling. The cruelty wasn't hidden, it was normalized. Not everyone supported the exhibits. Some religious leaders who were not as an activist condemned what was happening. A few visitors reportedly felt uncomfortable walking through the villages. But their voices were small compared to the massive crowds, and the fair continued making money. That raises a disturbing question. How many people privately knew this was wrong, but stayed silent because everyone else accepted it? History is filled with moments like that. Moments where cruelty becomes ordinary simply because enough people agree to ignore it. And maybe that's the scariest lesson of all. After the World's Fair ended, most Americans moved on, but the people displayed there carried the experience forever. Some returned home, others faced continued exploitation.
And for decades, the story faded into the background of history, almost buried, because it's uncomfortable to talk about. It forces people to confront a darker version of America's past, not ancient history, not medieval history.
Photographs, newspapers, eyewitnesses. Modern enough to feel disturbingly close, and maybe that's why the story still feels so haunting. Because it reminds us how quickly society can normalize cruelty. When it's packaged as entertainment, education, or patriotism. If you look at surviving photographs from the fair, you'll notice something strange. The crowds are smiling, people look relaxed, curious, happy. Almost nobody appears disturbed, and somehow that's more chilling than anything else, because monsters are easy to identify, but ordinary people can participate in horrifying things without even realizing how evil it looks to future generations. That's what makes the human zoos of 1904 so disturbing. Not just the exhibits themselves, but the millions of people who accepted them as normal. And maybe the most terrifying question is this: if something like the human zoos happened today, do you think society would immediately recognize it as wrong? Or would people once again convince themselves it was education or culture? What do you think was the darkest part of the 1904 World's Fair? And why do you think this story stayed hidden for so long?